Hi class, welcome to Module 7 as we look at marriage. We've been building to this. First we were looking at dating relationships, and then we were looking at the subject of love and how it comes together. And now we're looking at marriage. Well, no different than any other time. I need to start us with some music and get us starting. I've already clicked on this. Hopefully you're picking it up. It's Train, Marry Me. It talks about how important a relationship is. There's one enjoy this. The second video I give you was actually recorded at a wedding in Rochester, and I believe it was Rochester, Minnesota, not Rochester, New York. This video has been used to raise money for issues of domestic violence, but it's well worth enjoying what is going on in their wedding video. As you start to see the party together. So, marriage. What do we do with marriage? Marriage exists in all societies. We may call it different things. It may exhibit different things, but it is the tying together of couples, okay? Heterosexual couples, usually for the form to bring together the partnership for children. Now, marriage has a lot more connotation today than it did in the past, didn't it? And so as you start to explore these PowerPoints and this chapter, let's look at what marriage is today and how it's changed over time. Marriage is a legal and socially recognized relationship that includes sexual, economic, and social rights and responsibility for partners. This is why this becomes a big issue. It's not just the sex. It's not just the being together. It's that rights and responsibility of partnership. There is an expectation to be loyal to one another, to be tied in a manner that you're legally bound together, okay? It makes a difference in that process. Now, marriage has greatly changed. In the formation of the nation, you didn't marry for love. We didn't have strong periods. You often married who was available, who could help you complete what you needed to do. And we see the refinement of marriage coming in the 19th century as we introduce a big change in how we view this relationship. Now remember, in colonial America, there were some interesting issues related to gender. For one, a woman oftentimes in many states could not inherit. That legacies were passed from one male to another. So she needed to be in a marriage relationship. and it brought people together. Remember, there were fewer number of women than men as well. that's important to come in the process. And this too affects divorce when we look at that later in the chapter, that women didn't have the right to pursue divorce, men could. Women could only go after a divorce for failure to support, where men could go for many different issues, like not being a good housekeeper, not being a good mom, and any indiscretions on her part. We see this redefining of marriage and marriage as this partnership, and part of it ties to the changing economy. Here's your social influence was really coming into place. And then again, the change with the Industrial Revolution. Now, what's happening in marriage today? There's a marital decline. No surprise out there. Fewer people are marrying. Now, multiple reasons for that, isn't it? We start thinking about society and what's going on. More people stay in school longer. They marry later. They're being threatened in this pursuit of happiness. And we know that with increased divorce rates, people are less inclined to marry. That it is a matter of long-term commitment that comes into place. And do I have to give up all to be in that marital relationship? So, what's happening in marriage? The view that overall marriage is weaker than it was in the past, but that all families need an increase of structural support over time. And so we have this resilient perspective that marriage still goes on and people still want to get married. In fact, we have a movement from the homosexual population for marriage equality, which isn't even addressed in this book because so much of it is so new that is coming in place. That there's a value in being married and wanting to be married in that. So what are the marriage rates? Well, they've dropped, haven't they? And as we can see, that about 54% of men are married and 51% of women are married. Now, the population over the age of 15. Now, why does this look different, right? Then we may think it, well, number one, how many people get married at 15? Now, state laws vary. Each state creates their own marriage law related to age and who has to give consent for younger people to marry. So there are states where you can marry as low as 14, and other states that demand that you be 16 or 17 with parental consent and over 18 to be able to marry. But the average age of marriage, you're going to see, has gradually risen. So more people will remain single at those younger ages, and we still have issues of never married, which is increasing both in men and women, and widowed, okay? And that's we'll tie to as we look at the chapter on aging, middle years and aging. So who marries? Whites are more likely to marry than any other population, a higher percentage. And the lowest percentage as far as ethnic and racial backgrounds are blacks. They are less likely to marry. And here's the average age that we're talking about. If you notice, back in 1890s, the average age for men was 26 and 22 for females. And today, we're looking at 28 and 25. So the biggest change is not between those ages of males, though there were dropping rates in this time period, but the rates of the age of females are much older today. So what happens? Why delay marriage? While you're sitting in this classroom, that's what happens. Significant pieces of understanding go into place. And so part of it comes into more acceptance for delay, the fact that you stay in school longer, the fact that you're considered children even longer. And so we look at this in middle years as those parents are still supporting their children, finding work. Now, there's a number of different types of marriages out there. And so we have the homogeneous and the heterogamous marriage These are types of marriages in which the spouse shares similar characteristics, those homogeneous marriages out there. For same race, same ethnic values, similar religions, educational backgrounds in society. Majority of marriages have this tie of this like social backgrounds coming into place. And the heterogamous marriage are those that don't center around the social characteristics, that they're not the same. And so we see more diverse marriages than ever, and we see them in what we call interracial marriage or interethnic marriages that occur. And we see the difference that religion doesn't have the power, and that education, the likeness of the educational backgrounds may not be the same. Now, this makes a difference when we look at the strength of marriage as we start to see how things look across those lines and what ties together and how successful marriages are. So it's important as you play with this chapter to read that and look at those particular aspects of how these unions are more likely to succeed and what pieces come into place and what makes up a good marriage. Now, I've already told you what's happening to marriage today is same-sex marriage. Our book is out of date on this particular topic, very out of date. And so we bring ourselves to look at the fact that the Supreme Court has basically indicated that there is support for gay marriage in every state. And we've seen the arguments back and forth as far as what's going to happen. And here's some statistics looking at the support for gay marriage. Notice the increase across time that favor the unions that occur, which basically someone can get married in a state where gay marriage is legal, such as Pennsylvania is now, New York was in the past, and all states have to recognize that, giving them the same rights for economic support, for tying people together, for social supports that come into place. So there's been changing attitudes towards marriage. There's a changing attitude about non-marital sex. We know that sex, and we talked about this in our chapter about sexual relationships, that at 16, more than 50% of people at the age of 16 have been involved in the sexual act, right? There are big attitude differences to cohabitation. You completed the discussion board on whether they should have the same rights. Is it acceptable to move into a cohabitation situation? I think the argument is about same rights becomes more questionable as everyone has the right to marry now in that play. And then there are attitudes towards non-marital childbearing. In the past, there were names that we used. There were indications the child was stigmatized, or there was stigma attached to being born out of wedlock. Today, that really doesn't become a conversation in most environments. Now, believe me, it still occurs in some very conservative areas that bring that. And changing attitudes about marriage include the division of household labor. So we're seeing major changes occur. But the question is, if I can cohabitate, why bother to get married? It's going to cost me money. And if we don't make it, what happens? Well, there's a real issue that we find coming into place, that there is happiness related to marriage. That people who are in marriages are happier, healthier, and financially better off than those that aren't married, including those that cohabitate. So it's an interesting perspective. And it can involve many social issues. Think about this. Why is someone healthier? Why is a man healthier in marriage? Because he changes some of his behaviors. Because he has someone else to care about his health in the process. Why are they financially better off? because they spend money in different ways, as well as we know, and we're going to find out, that about more than 50% of households today that are in marriage relationships are in dual earner families. So both people bring income home. There's a big advantage to being married. Okay, there is the wage premium, the social capital that affects our health. As we have better wages, we can afford better health. We have more social support. We have more financial help. All right, that comes into place. Now, do they benefit people equally? No, men benefit more from marriage than women. But by the way, the statistics show that women too benefit in marriage. And there are different benefits based on race and ethnic value. Again, your book goes into much more detail than these slides will give you as you start to explore what happens. But marriage today is changing. Very different than it was before. And so that we see more marriages that look at different types of relationships. Let me back up on these slides a minute for you. So the types of marriages, we see a marriage that includes the frequent conflict, although it may be enduring, that this family doesn't communicate. Now, remember, as we looked at that communication chapter, you can still be in love, you still cannot communicate. Then we see the enduring marriage that exists without much passion, and then the ones that remain in conflict, and the enduring marriages that and the enduring marriages that include conflict, but a little bit of excitement that goes on. Now, marriage is changing over time. In class, American Family System, someone brought in an article about families, and we're talking about building relationships. And the couple, actually, the man lived in one house, the woman lived in the other. They split the children, and they stayed married. You see, those type of marriages can work in this society, can't they? This preconceived notion that two people have to live in a house together with the kids under the roof isn't necessarily the best way for the children or the family to continue to go. Do you want to give up all of that? And then you still have the excitement of getting together. Think about the different ways that marriages can come together and how we can look at marriage within the process. Now, there's been a moving towards marriages with more commitment, so people couldn't walk away from marriage. Think back to that triangle or the love connection in the rhesus wheel as we look at it. You know, what the marriage movement and covenant marriages are putting together is they hope to promote the strength of a traditional marriage. And a covenant marriage actually restricts access to divorce and requires that the couple go through pre-marital counseling, and they go through counseling before they would ever face a divorce. Success with these things, not the highest. We see that continued issue of going forward of many problems into place. As you review this chapter and you explore it, and again, I spent more time than I planned on it, I hope you see that marriage is continuing to change, and there's some real interesting pieces of it. I ask you to explore marriage laws and an article about marriage. With this particular module, it is not your chance to go into movies. I am asking you to plan a wedding. I want you to explore how much it would cost and why. And you're going to share this on your discussion board as you start to explore what marriage would look like. Now, some of you are married, but plan the wedding of your dreams, what you want into place. Look at what goes into place. Why do you add it there? What social influences are you seeing? So, when you click on to the wedding planner here, and let's hope it goes through. There it is. You're going to be able to download and fill this out and think about the dollars that will go into place as you start planning your wedding. Now, it opens in an Excel file, I believe, is why it just kicked me over there. So let's see if it will download in the process. Oh, there it goes. So there's your wedding planner. Pull this a little bit over. Let's plan on what you need to be in place. What needs to look out there? How much is this wedding going to cost you? What are you going to look at? What do you need in place? Plan a wedding and see these social influences that come into place. And we'll use this on your discussion board. No movies, just the quick music and a couple sites to look at. Have a great day.